There's a moment at parties that people who hate small talk know well. Someone asks how the commute's been, and before you've answered, you've already started calculating the fastest exit. It's easy to assume this is shyness, or antisocial behavior, or just being introverted. But here's what the research actually shows. The people who find small talk most painful are often the ones who want connection the most. Not less of it, more. They're not avoiding people. They're avoiding a specific kind of conversation that leaves them feeling like they haven't really talked to anyone at all. By the end of this, you're going to understand why that happens, and why the people who hate small talk most are often the best conversationalists you'll ever meet, under the right circumstances. The central question is this: why does a type of conversation specifically designed to help people bond make some people feel more isolated than silence would? Most people assume hating small talk is a personality flaw. Too serious, can't loosen up, won't meet people halfway. But that explanation misses something important. Small talk aversion isn't the same as introversion. That's the thing that surprises people most when they first encounter the research. A meaningful portion of the people who find small talk genuinely draining score as extroverts on personality measures. They like people. They like talking. They just need the conversation to go somewhere. The traffic on the way over. How tired everyone is. Plans for the long weekend. Did you catch the game? Can you believe this weather? Small talk has a recognizable texture, and for most people, that texture is comfortable. A warm-up. A signal that says, we're friendly, we're safe, we follow the same social rules. For another group of people, it's something different. Not rude, not offensive, but hollow in a way that's hard to explain to someone who doesn't feel it. Like trying to eat something with no nutritional value. You're going through all the motions of a meal, and you're not being fed. Picture this: a party on a Friday evening. A living room full of people, music in the background, glasses in hand. Someone you've just met asks what you do. You answer. They nod. You ask what they do. They answer. You nod. Someone mentions the traffic on the way over. Someone else has an opinion about a TV show. There's a joke you half laughed at. And somewhere around the 40-minute mark, you find yourself near a window, watching other people talk, and you realize you'd rather be home reading something you actually care about. Not because you don't like people, because in a room full of conversation, nothing has actually happened. The mechanism behind that feeling starts somewhere most people don't expect. In 2010, researchers published a study that followed people through their daily lives, recording snippets of actual conversations. They were comparing substantive exchanges versus small talk and tracking which type correlated with well-being. What they found was striking. People who had more substantive conversations and less small talk reported meaningfully higher well-being. Same amount of social time, completely different outcome depending on what was actually being said. That tells us something important. The thing that makes social interaction feel good isn't just the presence of other people. It's the sense that something real was communicated. For people who hate small talk, that threshold sits higher. Not impossibly high, but they need the conversation to contain at least one true thing. One moment where you said something you actually meant, or learned something you didn't know before. Psychology has a name for the underlying trait: need for cognition. It describes people who find mental engagement intrinsically rewarding. For people high in need for cognition, low information exchange doesn't just fail to satisfy, it actively costs something. It requires social effort and gives almost nothing back. And that's why the feeling after a small talk-heavy evening isn't just boredom, it's depletion. The social muscles got used, the mind got nothing back. But here's where it gets strange. Because everything we've covered so far only explains half of it. The people who hate small talk most are not, in general, the people who are worst at it. The intuitive assumption is that they hate it because they're bad at it. But it runs the other way. Many of them are completely fluent at small talk when they need to be. They know the rhythm. They can do the weather, the commute, the safe complaints about work. They just find the whole thing hollow in a way that people who enjoy it genuinely don't. Which raises a real question. Is this a preference, or something closer to a sensitivity? a genuine perceptual difference in how the same interaction registers. Here's the cross-cultural angle. Small talk as a required entry point. The idea that you wade through surface conversation before being allowed to say anything real isn't universal. In several Northern European cultures, moving directly to substantive topics is the norm. Visitors describe it as jarring at first, then deeply refreshing. The people who hate small talk might simply be people whose conversational instincts don't match the cultural script they're in. And here's what flips the assumption completely. The same person who disappeared from that party, phone at midnight, 3 hours in, talking about something that actually matters, not close to done, completely awake. It's not that they can't sustain social interaction. It's that the type changes everything. Extroversion measures how much interaction someone wants. This is about what kind. But knowing this and actually recognizing where it shows up are two different things. You can usually see it in how they move through social situations. They're not the ones who drift through a party and touch every conversation briefly. They're the ones who find one person, go deep, and leave satisfied, or don't find that person and leave early. Both outcomes feel like the same event. In work settings, they're fine in a meeting where something real is on the table, and visibly uncomfortable in the warm-up conversation before it starts. They're the colleague who sends a thoughtful message instead of stopping by the coffee machine, not because they're cold, but because the message lets them actually say something. What separates this from introversion is where the depletion comes from. A true introvert recovers by being alone, regardless of what was said. The person who hates small talk can spend 3 hours in conversation and leave completely energized, if the conversation was real. They leave a surface-heavy evening more depleted than they arrived, not from how long they stayed, but from the mismatch between what was offered and what they needed. There's a kind of loneliness almost nobody talks about. It's not the loneliness of being isolated. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people, spending an entire evening in conversation, and realizing that nothing you said or heard actually mattered to anyone. You were there. The transaction took place, and somehow you're more alone than you were before you arrived. That's what people who hate small talk are trying to avoid, not other people. That specific emptiness. They have a higher threshold for what counts as real connection. They need at least one moment in the conversation where someone was actually there, actually listening, actually saying something they meant. That's not a very demanding standard, but it's higher than small talk clears, almost by design. Research on conversation quality and well-being, on what makes interaction feel meaningful rather than just frequent, has produced some genuinely surprising findings for anyone who wants to go deeper. The thing that often goes unsaid about people who hate small talk is that they're not the ones who don't care about connection. They're the ones who care about it more precisely. They know the difference between going through the motions of a conversation and actually being with someone. Most people learn to stop noticing that difference. These people never do.